During our presentation today, we'll be hearing from Inbal Yassur, who is the Director of Staff Development and Clinical Practices at Encompass, and we'll get to meet her in just a moment. But before we go into that, we just wanted to give those of you who may not be familiar with CORE the context for these weekly CORE coffee chats. So CORE started out, as many of you know, as a funding model for the local safety net agencies in our county. But in the last couple of years, we, guided by a steering committee and with input from many of you, have worked really hard to broaden that to movement to achieve equitable health and well-being in our county using a results-based collective impact approach. And we've, as part of that process, developed a vision and mission statement that you see on the slide here. And what's important about these is the fact that equity has been at the center of this work all along. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means as we go through our presentation today, and as many of you have heard in prior weekly coffee chats. And what we mean by equity and equitable health and well-being is that everyone across the lifespan has equitable opportunities to experience the 8 core conditions. And these core conditions, which you may have seen before, are very connected and interdependent with each other. So they mean to us that everyone's opportunities and life outcomes aren't predictable, for better or for worse, by race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, immigration status, the zip code you happen to be born in, or any other defining characteristics. So to just give you a glimpse of how we think of this as being connected to today's topic of resilience and trauma, we can see trauma and resilience all around us if we look for it. And starting with health and wellness, I know from looking at the participants list that many of us on this call could be considered providers of different kinds of care in health and wellness. But we already know we can't care for the health and wellness of others, and we can't show up as our best selves if we aren't attending to our own resiliency account, if that's getting depleted. So that's one of the things we'll talk about today, is how to keep that going. The Black Lives Matter movement and the protests, the movement for racial equity has increased our awareness, day-to-day discussions, and most importantly, actions about what a safe and just community actually looks like. And here again, we have lots of opportunities to address racial equity, creating things like a common language and understanding of how the adversity and trauma of racial inequities have been carried for centuries and generations, and that affect all of us in some degree. And when we increase that type of understanding, we have a better chance of creating the shared spaces that are the building blocks for community connectedness. And that includes feeling connected to things like the healthy environment around us, as we discussed a few weeks ago in a discussion about racial equity in the local environmental scene. Because trauma is carried across generations, that undermines the idea of having thriving families, and that deprives them of the resiliency buffer that often comes with things like economic security and mobility. And all the systems we can think of, whether they're trauma-informed or not, may miss opportunities to support children and families as they try to build resilience. That's part of a system like lifelong learning and education, or affects stable, affordable housing and shelter. All of these things together can work to either increase the trauma for children and families and for all people, or build resilience that can serve as a buffer. So whether we're talking about trauma or healing, we wanted to illustrate the fact that these core conditions are all connected to each other, and these dotted lines really become strengthened by our efforts to work together, whether your work is in one of these core conditions or a couple of them. We just want to remind ourselves and everyone on these calls that all of this work is connected to all of the rest of it. And all of it flows through the middle that you see there of equity. The equity dimensions of all this work is at the center of CORE and at the center of what a lot of us are doing. These coffee chats, which many of you have been attending faithfully since we started them in March, are part of a larger effort to build local capacity about exactly these kinds of issues. So we are very grateful that you're here. We've called that umbrella for all of the capacity building the CORE Institute for Innovation and Impact. And we've been trying to offer a variety of capacity building tools and information and skill building, including everything from how to use Zoom or to how to get a PPP loan to more reflective issues around racial equity affecting responses to COVID-19. And today's workshop, which is a little longer format so that we can practice some of the skills that are going to be shared with us. So with that, I just want to remind you, we'll come back to what's coming next in the core coffee chats at the end of our session today, but for now, just welcome, and we're very glad you're here. So Inbal Yassur, as I mentioned, is the Director of Staff Development and Clinical Practices for Encompass. She leads all of Encompass's resiliency and trauma-informed care initiatives, and she's also a certified mindfulness meditation teacher. So we're very grateful to have her with us today. And I just wanted to say that as she teaches us about this model, the community resilience model, we encourage you to share your own questions through the chat. And we'll monitor that. Nicole and I will monitor that and try to relay questions back to Inbal while she's presenting. And we'll also have some time at the end of today's chat to explore further. So you'll have several opportunities as questions pop up for you during the presentation. I also wanted to say that while we're grateful to have so much of Inbal's time, and she's put a lot of effort into preparing this, it is an overview. There's much more available that she'll share with us in terms of additional training. She herself has been through a lot more training on this and has shared more with her colleagues. So this is really just to give you an idea of what's available. So we just wanted to do a little expectations management that we're not all going to walk out of here after an hour with full training in this, but we'll have a glimpse of some of the tools, and we will have some practical tools. I know from getting the privilege of a preview of this, some tools that we can apply right away this afternoon, but it's all part of whetting your appetite for learning more about this. So just, I'm sure we'll all have a lot of ideas and questions about how to apply this, but just know that this is just the beginning. So with that, we'll turn this over to Inbal, and welcome, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for this, such a welcoming words, and also just being able to kind of connect the dots for all of us with all that is happening and the mission and the vision of CORE. I'm just so honored to be here. And it is just, I can sense my heart beating a little faster right now, just seeing some familiar faces around the space and just having so many people that express interest in this topic. So again, just sensing into my own body. Before I start, with just a brief centering and intention setting practice, you maybe already picked up that my accent is a little different than the common California accent. At times, according to my beloved families that have known me for many decades, it's still hard to understand what I say. I'll do my best to pace myself, but if you're missing something that feels really important, please put it in the chat box and I will provide as much clarity. So again, thank you so much. And with it, just an invitation to take a couple of moments to gather our awareness. I don't know what your morning has been so far, what your last few days have been. So we just want to, again, very intentionally gather ourselves for this community of learning. It might be helpful just to begin by allowing yourself for a moment to relax on the chair if you're sitting on a chair, wherever you are. So many times, I noticed in the last months, definitely weeks and days, that my body gets to contract so easily with all that is coming my way. So very intentionally taking a moment of can I just let go just a little bit? Allow the chair, the couch to fully support you. Taking in very intentionally few deeper inhalation and few longer exhalations. Here we are. And with it, I was reflecting recently that the word in Hebrew, which is, by the way, my native tongue, for attention is, includes two words. It actually means attending with your heart, if I translate it. And it's funny because I never kind of deeply reflected on this beautiful meaning behind it, because you hear this phrase it's announced in the airport when you say, attention, attention, where is your luggage? So here it is, the invitation is to attend with our heart to our bodies, minds, souls, our experience at this moment, and hold it with kindness. So that's the invitation for today as we are embarking on this learning together. Again, so delighted to see all of you here. So here we are, and the topic for today, as Nicole named so elegantly, is an overview of the community resiliency model. So we'll get to, kind of jump the slide here, just get to introduce some of the key concepts. Hopefully we'll have a chance to practice a couple of the skills, check in about what does it mean to us individually and as a community. But before then, just a few words about where the model came from. It was, created by a wonderful licensed social worker, Elaine Miller-Karras, who resides in Claremont, California. And it really came from her work and the teamwork of the Trauma Resource Institute that have done a wonderful work internationally, responding to communities that were challenged by natural disasters, by adversities of all sorts. And then in 2013, they had this amazing opportunity to adapt this model with support of the Mental Health Act in California to make it, a model that's available to everyone in the community, really with the idea that this model that is based on biological concept will be, and research-based, will be accessible, transportable, affordable, and adaptable to all. So, so here we are with this model. And for us in Encompass, part of our trauma-informed and resiliency-informed initiative, we were looking for a set of skills, of a model, of a framework that we can bring to our staff, to all the people we serve, to the community. So when we found out about this model a year ago, last summer, and learned more about it from other organizations that adopted it, and then got connected with Elaine and her team, we're just so excited that it aligned with our visions, aligned with our values, and it's, as I said earlier, it's accessible and adaptable to everyone we serve. So this is how we landed on that. So I'm just, again, so thrilled to be able to share it with all of you. So today in this overview, we'll touch, kind of how it came about from a trauma-informed and resiliency-informed perspective, overview of the key concepts, and we'll get to introduce the key skills. So I keep coming back to that, the focus of the model, it's a skill-based model, yeah. And it starts with really deepening and understanding the impact of trauma and toxic stress on our nervous system. I didn't underline nervous system in this slide, but as you can see, as we move into the key concept and the skills, we keep coming back to how we can reset our nervous system with the intention that we can continue to show up with our best self, no matter what it is that is going on. And with it, bringing this approach to individual, to communities, to families, and to our world, as you'll see soon in terms of how widespread the model is. So just wanted to start, us today connecting us with some of the trauma-informed care principles. We won't take a deep dive today around that. It's included in the broader, longer training. And one of the core guiding principles that I know many organizations, many practices around the state, in our community, around the country, have been adopting for the last, I would say, like 15 years, we're really bringing the perspective that so many of the behavior that we see with ourselves, with the people we serve in our community, are a result of trauma and stress. They are a response to trauma and stress. And by us holding this perspective, the first thing, we can take a deep breath. We can hold with compassion initially, like what is it that is going on with ourselves and with everyone around that. And then that will help us, design our services and also relate to ourselves in a different way. So with it, I wanted to share kind of this perspective shift from what is kind of used to be, and it's not in the past tense, unfortunately, if we look around our country right now, at times also within our own community and within ourselves, what we call like trauma organized, where, we tend to be very reactive, fragmented, move into blaming really fast. And the question that we so quickly jump to is like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And I added here also our own, self-critical voice is like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with us? And how quickly, this is one of our defaults. So as we engage more in a trauma-informed education, deepen our understanding of that, practice the skills of trauma-informed, the shift of the perspective is to what happened to you, what happened to them, what is happening to me. Yeah. So we can see how it's beginning to shift the way we look at what's happening. So then now we are adding the resiliency-informed perspective, where, the assumption, the belief behind it that any person can learn self-regulation skills based on science. And we can all understand better and, and learn to practice skills of well-being so we can reduce suffering. So the questions are, what is right with you, with me, with them? What are your strengths? What are our strengths? So I think, this perspective shift and kind of seeing it this way, for me, it's really helpful, and it's just a helpful reminder. And with it, just a moment to reflect, without any going into too much of a, self-critical voice, like, when do you tend to get stuck? When do you go to what's wrong with me? When do you go to what's wrong with the other person, the other institution? And what allows you to reflect, oh, what's right with me? What's right with you? What is right with us? Just, reflecting on this for a moment. So with it, shifting to the community resiliency model, and I forgot to mention that in short, we call it CREAM. I think with my accent, it might sound a little bit French. And so I will keep referring to it as CREAM just because the community resiliency model is a mouthful. So what is unique about this model, and again, it was very appealing to us, and it's been found very successful all around the world, is that can you be used across lifespan? Understanding our nervous system and how our nervous system responds to stress and adversity, learning to read our nervous system is the human capacity. And learning how to read, these are skills that anyone can learn. Young children in preschool, in kindergarten, and all across the lifespan. It's, again, all of us as humans have a nervous system. So it's been applicable and accessible all across cultures. And the way the model has been designed and how complex concept has been simplified some ways. So it's, again, it's very accessible with different literacy abilities. So that's been, again, many good reasons for us to choose that. Again, just naming more how, again, the access to, we all have access to the language of our bodies, no matter what language we speak and in what languages we dream. We can always kind of check in what's happening in the inside, and we'll get to practice it a little bit. So just like a little overview of who are we joining around the globe, just kind of, wow, I know it makes my heart kind of opens. So many countries, I think when like 123 something when we count them, so many also states in the US, if we add our little Santa Cruz where it is right now, and having all of you, it's like we add so many more partners, and also just to name around that, the type of services or population that the model has been introduced to, from Head Start to Early Head Start, law enforcement, behavioral health organization, community organization, all sorts are so wide and broad. So lots of experience from all around the world. And in the end of today, I get to touch a little bit about some of the research behind the efficacy of the model. So coming toward the end. So before we move kind of deeper to understand and learn about some of the concept, just so you don't have to rush and take notes very carefully, first the PowerPoint will be shared with you by Nicole and Nicole. Thank you so much. And also there's a wonderful app that was created by the Trauma Resource Institute. It's called the iChill app. It's both in English and Spanish, which is wonderful. And it has a lot of the content and also some very practical ways to practice the skill that we'll be reviewing. So highly recommend to download this app. And just few kind of remind ourselves of what this model is and what it's not. The training, the CRM training is an educational workshop where we get to practice skills as we bring it to the community, we bring it to service providers. And with the intention, that all of us, as we go through the training, will become resiliency model guides. So that's kind of where we are heading with that. Today, again, it's just an overview. And we also, anytime, that we engage in an intentional, heart-opening way with trauma, toxic stress, adversity that touches so many of our lives, we can find ourselves, that some of our own experiences are being activated. So just naming that, if somehow during our discussion or check-in today, you're aware of that, please reach out for support, your own support system or outside of that. And also just really highlighting that CRM is not a replacement for psychotherapy and counseling. So as you move forward, if you're interested to take the model and bring it to your workplace, to bring it to the people just holding in mind that other resources are available. Yeah, so shifting into CRM, some of the core concept behind it. So, and with it also just taking a moment, sense into your body right now. Maybe apply some pressure towards the back of your seat. Sense your feet on the ground. Am I inviting you to do it? It's not any magical trick around that. Actually, with all of us moving into Zoom, into virtual learning in the last few months, there's a lot of research about how long can we sustain our attention. So every 15 minutes, it's helpful just kind of to shift. So this is what we are doing right now. So I'm inviting you to do that. Also, if you have a glass of water next to you, taking a sip of water can help. Yeah, so here we are moving into some of the key concepts. So in the core of the model is the resilient zone model. So, and in the center of it is the resilient zone itself, which sometimes, especially when introduce this concept to children, we call it the OK zone. So what is it? Who are we when we are in a resilient zone? I think kind of even immediately when you hear that, you might be like, oh, when I'm in my OK resilient zone, I can respond to the world. I can navigate what comes our way. Yeah. I'm settled. My nervous system is settled. What's important, when we think about the resilient zone is to keep in mind that it's not a straight line. It's not any of us or myself sitting under the Buddha tree. Emotions come and go when we are in the OK zone. It's like almost we imagine like a small waves. It can be emotion of joy, excitement, happiness, and could be emotions of sadness, anger or frustration. However, the waves are small enough that we can continue and show up from our best self when we are in the resilient zone. So we are not losing our cool, kind of in other words, and we are not too overwhelmed and out of control. Yeah. So that's kind of in the center of that. And then, as we know, life happens, and it happens pretty intensely these days. And we get bumped out of the resilient zone. So, one direction that we get bumped out very often, ask you to reflect about it in a moment, is to what we call the high zone. Reactivity, I know for me, this is where me in the high zone is showing up, is with reactivity, irritability, frustration. Some of us, anxiety and panic, anger outbursts and pain. Yeah. And then, another direction to be bumped out of the resilient zone is to the low zone, where, we can feel numb, exhausted, fatigued. That's really hard to get going. So I want you to take a moment now and reflect as you see the image in front of you, and reflect on the last few days. Where have you been on the resilient zone model? Where have you been finding yourself? Have you been, floating in the resilient zone, maybe bumping towards the high or the low? Maybe you find yourself for some time stuck for some time in the high or the low zone. Or maybe, you kept kind of pretty, again, grounded in the grounding space in the resilient zone itself. So just take a moment to reflect, maybe take a note of that. And we'll shift to with it as you kind of take put our pulse like with the poll. So if you can just choose and kind of share with us, where have you been?
Okay, I'm going to end the poll and share the results.
Yeah, so let's take a moment to see it. It seemed like that, like, I have 50%, like half of us been bumped in and out. Yeah. And some of us have been stuck in the high or the low zone, around the edges. And we have some of us have been in the okay resilient zone. So again, just for now, again, coming back to this, open heart attentiveness to where we have been individually as a community. Yeah. Just holding it in space. Yeah. So thank you, Nicole, again with the poll, and you can go ahead and close it. So, going back to the image of the resilient zone and why it's such a key concept. It's become like a reference check for us, and a point of, continuously checking in. Where am I at this moment? Where am I before I'm heading to a meeting? Where am I as I'm sitting down for dinner with my family? Where am I as I'm getting up in the morning and checking the news and noticing, maybe the news is bumping me out, or something else that is happening around us. Since as we are checking into this, we are intentionally sensing into our body and into body sensation, and we'll practice later how to do that. Yeah. With the goal around that is the intention behind the model, and the skills are built to support us to come back to the resilient zone and to support us in widening the resilient zone. So with it being, such a key concept, we wanted to spend a little bit of time just to check in around that. So we will transition into breakout rooms. And if you are new to Zoom, just a brief introduction to that. You'll automatically be put in a small space. I mean, it's only a small space. It's you on the screen with 3 to 4 people randomly. The only thing you need to do is click join room, and then you'll find yourself in the new space. It'll be really great to turn on your video, so hopefully if you have access to that. We'll talk about timekeeper in a minute, and then you'll get prompts about how much time you have left to come back. It's important to remember that if you have any problems, technical issues, you'll see on your Zoom screen a way to call in the host, so we can provide support. So what do we do in the small breakout sessions? First, just, connecting with some agreements of sharing the space with respect, generosity, compassion, avoiding advice giving. It's just really a space of listening, And what happens in the group stays in the group. You know, we are coming from so many agencies, so many walks of life, community members, which is so special around the core coffee chat gathering. So just maintaining confidentiality. So then how do we start? You find yourself in space with two other people. You know, choose a timekeeper. Just for suggestion, maybe the person with the shortest hair can go first. So, you know, you don't have to worry, kind of negotiate it for too long. Kind of confirm that everyone is good with the agreements, if there's anything else to add to that. And then going around the space, and for each person has the opportunity to share for a couple of minutes the reflection to the questions. You know, what bumps you out of the resilient okay zone? How wide is your resilient zone these days? And what will help you to come back to your okay zone? The invitation is to be specific. You know, it's a short time, but we, you know, so, and again, allow each of you to have time for that. So invitation right now is, I know it's hard to, is a lot of details. You can take a picture with your phone of the screen. And also I know that Nicole will put the questions in the chat box. You will have access to that. So, and you will have 10 minutes in the group. So with that, Nicole, I think we are ready to transition into breakout session.
Okay.
So put on your,
go.
yeah, thank you. So welcome back, everyone. So first, we just want to acknowledge at the times the technical issues around Zoom can be, I know for me, definitely one thing that can definitely bump me out of my okay zone. Yeah. So if you experience that even momentarily, you know, invitation kind of, okay, here we are. We are continuing to learn how to navigate this new way of being. And also just, again, if you didn't have a chance to share with another person, just taking another moment to reflect. And specifically reflecting, you know, and if you recall a specific situation where you bumped out of the zone, what helped you to come back? And Nicole L, you know, I just kind of want to invite you just for a moment, just if anything that touched your heart as you're listening to your group, of like just themes that came up, if you don't not mind sharing with us.
Not at all. I mean, in one way or another, each of us in our group, there were 4 of us, talked about this moment, the emotion and the optimism coupled with the, you know, just the political implications of Black Lives Matter, and feeling, I think one of our group members said, on the precipice of something really important and different, and how hopeful that made you feel. And we also talked about the connection of heart and mind, and trying to hold on to that, how that, the role of that kind of thinking in getting in and out of the zone. So
yeah, all of that.
We
so
covered
much.
a lot of ground in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think they're so rich and such heartfelt. Yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And, you know, I wish we can hear more of their reflections. Just for the sake of time, you know, we'll hopefully have a chance to come back to it as a community sometime in the future. So
They
again,
were great
thank you.
questions. Yeah, I thought they were really thought-provoking.
Great, thank you. So with it, you know, as you know, one of the concept that we keep, and the word that we use so much and so frequently is resiliency. And it's, in some ways, you know, it's become kind of a buzzword. It's been watered down a little bit. So we just want to take a moment and reflect in a very, like, what does it mean to me? What does it mean to you? Yeah. And it might be helpful to think about, when you think resiliency and you close your eyes for a moment, what images comes up? What does it mean to be a resilient person? What does it mean to be a resilient team or community? And if you can just take a moment and share your just a word or two in the chat box, that would be helpful, just for us to gather kind of this bouquet of images to help us unpack that.
Ellen says laughter. Najib says getting back up.
Getting back up, bouncing back.
Strength. adaptable.
Yeah.
Sylvia says, fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Yeah. Yeah. So just naming a lot of quality of inner strengths that allow us to navigate and grow out of challenging situations. Other comments there, Nicole, that you're seeing? I see a lot of.
Yeah, there's some great ones here, like bamboo in strong wind.
Yeah.
Soar like an eagle. Challenge power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holding on to wonder. That's a nice one
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Imagination. Great. Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be more, and if we have time, we can come back to that. So thank you so much for sharing that to help us again unpack that. And with it, as we talk about resiliency and coming back to some definitions, just wanted to reflect, actually for a moment about what is resiliency not, since we use it so much. Because sometimes, we kind of this misconception that it's about, let's kind of shift away from the challenges, from the pain, from the hardship and the adversity, and just look at the bright side. And it's so not that. And it's actually, and especially in the context of CREAM, it's about allowing us to be able to navigate, heal, be present, respond to the challenges. Because if, again, going back to the resiliency zone and knowing how I am when I'm in the high zone, on the low zone, I cannot make wise decisions when I'm not in my resilient zone. I cannot respond in a way that will be respectful to the people around me many times. So, and I cannot heal painful experiences. So as we think about ourselves as as individuals, a community, as a team, it's really about connecting with our resiliency, charging our resiliency account, as Nicole mentioned early on in the introduction. It's not about turning our head from what is present here. It's actually start by naming what is here, so we can navigate it more. Yeah, so just kind of, again, holding it together. And just this one definition, it's about shifting our state individually or in groups to be more present, to be more open, connected, and more resourced, so that we can actually face what is and take skillful actions. So we start, as we named before, with a trauma-informed perspective of just really naming, noticing, recognizing the reactions we all have as humans to stress and adversity. So here around this spectrum, I just named some of the common reactions that have been seen all around the world in response to COVID. And some of them might be familiar to you, like, oh yeah, maybe you find yourself going into controlling behavior. I'm definitely one of these, was in a serious controlling behavior club, just the level of frustration and irritability, going deep sense of grief and hopelessness of what is it that the sense of deep loss of things, of the normalcy, of the opportunity of what was possible. I know for myself, my daughter was freshman in college. She still is. I mean, she just finished the first year. So in March, she has to pack her room and come back home. And the whole experience of college, it was so desired and enjoyed, that to be abruptly stopped. And this is just one, minute example, while again, the impact, especially on communities that have been already disadvantaged, is so much deeper than that. So again, just holding all of that as we think about this is our all common habitual responses. And what I want to name around that, just to again also hold it with self-compassion and compassion to all that these are such automatic, habituated response to stress. This is where this is our default. So by us naming it, what we said in the trauma-informed language, name it to tame it. So the first, we just recognize what is. And then with CREAM, we open it up and we kind of see like, how else is, what are the other common reaction? And really looking, how the common reaction shows up in our body, in our mind, in terms of our beliefs, in our behaviors, spiritually, in our relationships. So that's something, again, in the sake of time, why we won't go deeper to it, but that's something that we do in longer training, just really getting to know how we, what is our habitual default mode in response to stress. And as we hold that, coming from the resiliency model, we continuously engage in resiliency pose. And the question that, we asked, you in the very beginning as a starter was, who and what helped you recently? Who or what gives you hope? Who or what uplifts you? So just for this moment, just taking a second to respond to whatever one of these three questions that speaks to your heart. Yeah. And then you might have a long list in the response. So just pick one of the who or what on your list. Bring this image to mind and allow the body to relate with that. Sensing again how the connection with this image allows you to, to allow to the body to reset just for a moment. Yeah. And that's, again, we take these resiliency poses regularly and intentionally as we engage with CRM. And it allows us then to also focus on what we call post-traumatic resiliency reactions. And I think, again, in the context now of COVID, of the police brutality, Black Lives Matters, and all the other deep challenges that individuals in our community are facing, communities all around the country and the world are facing. We also have seen this incredibly heartwarming resiliency reactions. And I think also in the chat box, someone mentioned that the neighborhood kind of got together and created this resiliency kit support to each other. Celebrating 5 years old in the neighborhood with masks and social distancing. So take a moment as you reflect on that and also ask yourself, what has been some of, what resiliency reaction have you experienced recently? We just take another quick poll, like, what is it? And you can choose as many, you don't have to choose just one option. Nicole, if you can go ahead and show us the results. So gratitude, advocacy, appreciation, compassion for self and others, new meaning. We touch all of it. So again, there's just so much that is, is showing up in such beautiful ways. So we hold all of that. We hold our awareness to the adversity, the trauma, the challenges, and we continuously connect with what else is true. So just want to take now a few moments just to touch on how CRM is deeply grounded in neuroplasticity and the science of the brain. I'll do it pretty briefly, sake of time here. So, I kept mentioning the concept of the nervous system and how CRM is, and the skill that I'll introduce in a moment, are designed to support us in resetting the nervous system. Our nervous system is such a automatic reaction to stress and adversity. I'll touch with it in a minute. So by us intentionally engaging with scientifically based skills to support us resetting, so we can come back to our okay zone where our nervous system is settled. So we'll again continue to connect with that. So our nervous system, just in a couple of words to remind us of the two, main elements that keep being at play in this beautifully, elegantly designed system that is autonomic. So for most part, it's really, helpfully and luckily, is not within our control. So it will be familiar as, for some of you maybe more than others. So we have the one aspect is the sympathetic part that prepares for action, what we call the fight and flight mode that we get into if we feel under threat. Our breathing, goes up, heart rate, sweating, blood pressure, and it's hard to really attend to food and to other mundane activities. So again, automatically we sense threat, our bodies align itself to immediately respond. And then we have the other side, the parasympathetic part that allows us to rest, allow us to regain balance. Another way to look at it is, the sympathetic side is an accelerator, like a car, like it pushes the adrenaline, the hormones into our body so we can move very fast. And then the parasympathetic part is like the brakes to allow us to settle. So hold this in mind as we move forward, because as we'll talk about the skills in a moment, really our goal here is to come back to a place of balance. And when we are in the resilient zone, we are in our parasympathetic, side, so we can respond and regulate. So with it, I'm going to move a little bit brief here. The other foundational concept underlying CREAM is a concept of neuroplasticity. In a nutshell, just our lifelong capacity for our brain to change and grow. For me personally, it was such great news. It didn't end in kindergarten. We continuously can continue and grow and change and build new neural pathways in the brain. One of the key phrases around it, you might have heard it before, neurons that fires together, wire together. So as we support certain activities in the brain, especially if you do it again and again, it creates new neuron pathways that are there, and we can use them as a default. So that's in behind CREAM. So briefly, how does it all relate to building and restoring resiliency? Again, we unpacked resiliency a little bit, the inner strengths quality that build resiliency. So how do we get this? About thirds are innate, based upon heredity. We are born with them. And the really good news, the 2/3 are developed over time. These are learned skills. So then how do we build them? So, and this is, I'm relying here on the work of a wonderful neuropsychologist, Rick Hansen. So kind of his framework around it, and a lot of other neurosciences that have done amazing brain research and really looking at what parts of the brain evolve and develop as we engage in building these skills. So in a nutshell, and again, that will be in future training, the process is to notice a positive experience, then stay with the experience, feel it in the body, absorb it. Again, the connection with the body is critical to allow us to build new neurological pathways in our brain. And again, another kind of way to think about it is what you pay attention to will grow. So what we notice and we allow it to settle in our body will allow us to grow. So with it in mind comes the skills of CREAM. In our basic training, we cover the basic three, which are tracking, resources, and grounding, and we touch on the skill of help now. So kind of very briefly, I'll name them right now. I don't think we'll have much time to experiment. So tracking is really, we cannot do CREAM without tracking. And as a mindfulness teacher, when I was introduced to CREAM and to tracking, like, oh, this is the mindfulness moment. We are noticing and paying attention to what's happening inside our body at the present moment. We are noticing, we are connecting with our nervous system. We are noticing the quality of our breath. Is our heart moving fast? What other sensations are there? And then we are asking ourselves, are these pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And very intentionally, with CREAM, we stay focused and allow the pleasant and neutral to ripple. Yeah. So just kind of a way also to gather ourselves right now, just a moment. We do it in one moment of practice. If you can bring your hands together and rub them with each other. Yeah, just kind of very fast create this. Yeah, here we go, just for another 5 seconds. And then pause. If it's helpful, close your eyes for a moment and just sense into the sensation in your hands and your body. I'm just going to, again, just name tingling, warmth, heaviness, lightness, just sensation words. Yeah. And then ask yourself which are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So just as a way, again, we're just a little glimpse into, oh, I can check into what I'm experiencing on the inside. Yeah. And why are we doing that? To really help us to build these refined skills of noticing sensation of distress and sensation of well-being. Yeah. So can we begin to have a choice to what we pay attention to as we build this inner strengths, qualities of inner strengths. So with it, kind of like, I was so delighted, I was reading just a wonderful book that seems so relevant to our times right now. It's called My Grandmother's Hands by an amazing social worker, African-American social worker, Wesma Meneken. And he's saying few skills are more essential than the ability to settle your body. When you can settle your body, you are more likely to be calm, alert, and fully present, no matter what is going on around you. A calm, settled body is a foundation for health, for healing, for helping others, and for changing the world. Yeah. So I think just like taking it in right now, as we are, we are going to kind of closing the presentation shortly, and just in the context of what's happening in our country, and seeing now how this model and the skills can be so powerfully applicable to our times right now. Because if we think about what's happening in our community right now, what's happening in our country, what happened in Atlanta over the weekend, how the whole community was possibly stuck in the high zone. Yeah. And how if we are all engaged with these simple skills that allow us to reset the nervous system, we can attend to what's happening. We can attempt to attend to what's happening in the world. Yeah. To just really want to bring Wesma here and strongly recommend his book. So kind of going to run briefly over, the skill of resourcing is another very foundational skills. And we use tracking to notice how, again, noticing sensation in the body as we connect with the resource. Is there an internal resource, imagined resource, external resource? Really anything that we, in our imagination, our experience can provide us strengths, can help us feel better. And creating a whole bouquet of these resources and working with them as we do in further training and practices is just so, just help us to come back to the okay zone. That's the intention around that. We won't have time to practice right now, so I apologize for that. Move us right along. Just touching on the skills of help now, reset now, which is like a set of interventions that help us, in some ways, you say like snap out if we are stuck in the high zone. It can be, again, as you can see, these are very like, oh, these are so simple, how can this work? And the reason these skills work and they are so simple because they are set and designed to help us reset and settle our nervous system. So to our minds, they seem too simple, but for our nervous system, they are soothing and calming. So again, to be identifying this, and this is what we do in future workshops, can be such a helpful tool when we know already we are heading into a heightened situation, or we just notice that we are not in our okay zone, not in our resilient zone. Yeah. And the skill, another skill again that we expand more is a skill of grounding. It's broader than the usual just feel your feet on the ground. It's really expanding it to be in contact of something that provides support in the present moment. So I'm kind of moving along us. So overall, just to hold that, if we kind of think about the skills of CREAM and the core concept of the resiliency model is the first thing is to identify sensation of distress and well-being by tracking. And then as we identify sensation of distress, which means that we are not in our resilient zone, is shifting to intentionally engage with resourcing, grounding, help, reset now. So this is kind of where we are heading with that. Whew, taking a breath here. So just want to kind of name like some of the incredible research that has been taking place behind CREAM. And, again, as I said, CREAM has been used all around the world. Sierra Leone was, one of the places. Again, there was also a review and research 6 months follow-up to see the improvement and how consistent it has been. You'll see it in your slide. I'm moving pretty fast in the sake of time right now. And here, I bought this slide specifically because you can see this is following a 3 hours class. It's not like 3 days of full workshops. And again, with nursing staff in a big hospital in the Midwest, where the results were So positive, yeah. For us, just another one, for us at Encompass, we've been integrating the practices now since the beginning of April in different service areas. So this is our Head Start and Early Head Start. And like seeing again how following 3 sessions, staff was experienced whether they're able to adapt to change more easily and navigate uncertainty and unknown. And that was just early on after we went into shelter in place. So it was just very uplifting to see that we can support staff in this way. So here we are, our goal here with SCREAM is to become resiliency model guides that that are informed and being aware of our ability to return to our resilient zone. Yeah. So this is our intention here. And as we support our community, our staff, the people we serve to learn the skill, is that we all can become guides to ourselves and to others. So I know I kind of went very fast here for the last part, so apology for that. There's always a sense of not enough time. And I do want to open it up for question and reflection here for a couple of moments. And Nicole, I don't know if there have been any questions on the chat box already.
I haven't seen any yet. I just want to remind everyone that we'll be sending out a PDF of Inbal's slides, so you'll have those for reference afterwards. But if you have a question for Inbal, please feel free to share in the chat. And thank you. That I know it was a bit compressed in the time we had available, but you covered so much ground, and I know people are finding a lot of meaning and things to take from it. So, any specific questions that you may have while we have Inbal here together?
Maybe while people are can you say how someone can become a guide? Okay, so actually relate to what I was just going to name.
Yeah,
so
and maybe while you're at it, also whether you're going to be able to offer any longer trainings in the future.
Sure, yeah. So again, the training are designed for participants to become guides. So, a curriculum that we have been experimenting with community partners and within Encompass takes 4 sessions. So it's around 6 hours, and we do it over 4 weeks. And in between, especially now with virtual learning, we give people home practices to support the engagement in the skills. And the intention is by the end of this 4 weeks, series, they will be resiliency guides. So just as an example. So that's all possible. And longer term will allow us, of course, to go deeper, to really expand our knowledge of how trauma and adversity impact us and how we respond to that. So I hope again that today you're able to kind of get a flavor of what it's all about. I kind of want to end with some words from Krista Tippett, a very inspiring and leader and journalist. Hope is the muscle. It's a choice. It's a vigorous choice to see what is wrong and what needs healing and needs repair and needs our attention, and also to keep our hearts and our imagination and our energy oriented towards what we want to build, what we want to create, what we are working towards. Yeah. So in this time of so much uncertainty, just continue to really engage with it so deeply. So I want to thank you so much. My email is here.
Thank you, Inbal. That is such a lovely landing for the presentation and for all the information you shared. We hope this will help everyone expand their okay and resilience zones and be aware when you bump out of it, and have some ideas for how to get back in. So look forward to learning more, and thanks to everyone for attending. As you know, we have a feedback survey that we pay close attention to, so we urge you to click on that link and let us know what you think, and also if you have suggestions for future topics. Next week on the 14th, we are going to be featuring a program for grade level learning week, building the foundation for early school success before, during, and after COVID-19. And that's going to be with our guest, the PVUSD superintendent, Dr. Michelle Rodriguez. And then on the 21st, we'll be featuring a program co-sponsored with the City of Santa Cruz on health and all policies, which we think will be really an interesting way to connect all of the dots that we like to connect. So we urge you to join that as well. We'll keep you posted on what we're going to be doing later in August as well. And then we received some information from Laura Tobias about the webinar next Tuesday afternoon from 1 to 3 about models for social justice in K through 12 school settings, and we'll be sending out some information about that along with our follow-up email for those of you who are interested. That's next Tuesday afternoon from 1 to 3. So we hope to see you at a future coffee chat or conversation. And thank you very much for being here and for helping to spread the word about all of this useful information. And a special thank you to Inbal for sharing with us.
Thank you,
We appreciate
everyone.
it.
It was an honor. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.